welcome our guests, Jamie Nichols, West Cormier. They are candidates for District 1 County Commissioner. What we're going to do is give you each about 5 to 10 minutes to introduce yourselves and make any statements you care to. At that point, I'm going to open the floor for questions. The same question will be asked to both of you. No questions will be asked individually. I'm going to ask you to alternate. So whoever answered the last question will answer first the next question. And that back and forth in spirit of fairness. If there is a question that has to do with an act of the incumbent West, Jamie will have an opportunity to respond with what she would have done had she been there. I think that's maybe the most fair way to go about it. If anybody has any comments on that. None? Hearing none. Jamie, you may start.
Hi, my name is Jamie Nichols. I'm running for County Commissioner for District 1. I decided that I've been involved in my local, the Grace Harbor Democrats Party for about 8 years, and I was inspired after watching Bernie Sanders speak, and I realized one person could actually make a difference. And I was talking to my husband, and I was like, I want to run for office. And he's like, really? I'm like, can I actually do that? Can just a regular person can run? And he's like, yeah, you can. So I went and filed, and I would like to see more jobs, focus on infrastructure and public safety in Grace Harbor County. And of course, tourism. That's a big one for me.
Thank you very much. Wes?
My name is Wes Cormier. I'm running to retain my seat as a District 1 County Commissioner. And over the last 3.5 years, I've always voted my convictions and without an eye on re-election. So, I believe that that's how we're supposed to govern. And I'm married to my wife, Amber, for the last 9 years. And we have 3 beautiful little kids, Noah, Samuel, Michael, 2 5 and 7-year-old. And it's been a great experience living on the harbor, and I just want to preserve that. And that's why I ran for county commissioner. And that's why I like to retain my seat as a county commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will open the floor to questions.
As you know, or some of you know, I've been involved in politics. I've been a student of politics since I can remember, many decades actually. There is a body of belief in this county amongst many politicians, experienced, both on city councils and boards, whatnot, that the current number of representatives on the Grace Harbor County Commission should be increased. Over the years, the population's increased, the number of commissioners has not. The workload has exponentially increased with the complexities of government. So I'd like to ask the candidates where they stand on the possibility of increasing the membership of the commission from 3 to 5 to more adequately provide time to interface with your electorate a little bit more and time to do the job more efficiently.
Thank you. We'll start with Jamie.
That's a very interesting question, and I believe Pierce County has 5 commissioners. I know that's something that we'd have, go in through, and we'd have to divide up districts and everything and do a new districting map. So I'm curious about that. Would there be new district locations? Would these 2 new people have, can we afford more commissioners? I have very many questions. I would like to look into that because I don't want to make a decision until I look on every end of an aspect.
My position is, in order to do that, you have to go through what's called a charter review process. And I'm not a supporter of the charter review process because every time we've seen that, 6 different counties have adopted a charter review. And what we've seen in those charter reviews is their budget immediately go astray. And San Juan County was one of the last to do that. And they've actually looking at going back to their original form of government. County government's been around since 1215. for quite some time, when the Magna Carta was around, and it's a tried and tested separation of powers. And what scares me about the charter review process is when you go through that process, it allows the commissioners the ability to appoint an assessor, treasurer, auditor, clerk, coroner, and possibly a county sheriff. And there's a reason why there's a separation of powers. If you've read newspapers, you know that the auditor is our check and balance. He's constantly bringing things to our attention, and it's good for the process. It's good for that separation of powers. And I'm a strong believer in that separation. And what we've seen in other counties is that separation leaves because now you have a commission having the authority over all of these departments that assess your property for taxes, that run your elections for elected office, that run your enforcement for deputies and your county sheriff, and ultimately your coroner is the only elected official that can arrest a sitting sheriff, and I'd want to keep him elected or her elected.
Be a lot of follow-up on that.
Is there anybody else that has questions right now on that subject? If not, I'll follow.
We're not talking about changing the form of government. We're talking about an increase in the number of commissioners. And in fact, the process can be initiated by the current commission, or it can be initiated by petition of the voters and horseshoe is the way to go. And I would just like to know what would you do if there's a petition presented to you?
If there's a petition presented to me, then we'll hear the case. I would probably vote no on it because I don't think my workloads at this point in time is overbearing enough to have 5 commissioners. I think that the larger your board is, between the 3 commissioners, we sit on between about 45 different boards and committees. And what I've seen in the larger boards is there's less accountability. On the smaller boards, there's quite a bit of accountability. Because there's an audience looking at 3 members rather than 5. And so with that, I would say that I would probably vote no. If it was a county-wide election and the people of the county wanted it, then I would vote yes at their recommendation.
Jamie, you respond?
Like I said before, I like to look into both ends of an idea before I make a decision on it.
Thank you. Andy?
Well, I was just wondering where you think we would get the money, because the salary is about, what, $78,000 per council or commissioner. So 2 more commissioners, or how many were you thinking, 5? 5? Would cost us another approximately $200,000. So where in the budget would we find that if we did that, say, next year?
I would say that we're running a $1.2 million deficit currently.
How much?
$1.2 million deficit.
Okay.
A year and a half ago, we were running a $2.5 million deficit. So any money that we can find and maintain is important.
Okay, thank you. Jamie?
Yeah, I agree that we would have to look into every single aspect before making any kind of decision about that, especially the money issue. That's a big one.
I'm on their side, because I just moved up here from Clark County 3 years ago. They just voted in, just what you're talking about, 5 commissioners. They have 2 lawsuits right now going on. The commissioners are suing each other. When you get into that many people trying to run a county, it just creates too many problems. Everybody's got their own little clique in the county. With 3 of them, we didn't have a problem down there at all. Now we got 5. Things are being cut. The homeless shelters are being cut. Everything is being cut. And one of the reasons is because that additional funding had to go to fund those commissioners. So it doesn't work as well as you think it will.
Thank you. Let's, for this portion of the meeting, have questions to the candidate.
Okay.
And then we can have a discussion afterwards about it if we choose to.
Okay.
Don, was your hand?
This question is about the recently passed 0.3% sales tax for with 1/3 of it available for justice and 2/3 for something else. The commissioners came out with a resolution identifying how they plan to spend the money. And I don't have it with me, but there was a whole list of things. Our mayor at Monday indicated that she's had a change of mind from what she said it would be when it was discussed and the city council approved, even though it's a budget issue. I expected at least to be the beginning point of the budget, not something that has to be fought for. So I guess my question is, how do you feel about what was listed before the election and that resolution? Are you going to support those items for the money? I know you have a separate fund set up,
Yes.
and it'll be all identified, but are those the items, or is anybody going to be changing their mind?
Is this going to you first? Yeah.
Me first? Okay. I actually just heard this morning a couple different opinions on it, and I would like to look into everything before I make a decision on it. I do not want to say one thing and then decide later, oh, that's not what I would have said.
Are you familiar with what the items were?
I believe they were new police cars.
Well, there was about a dozen of them, actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Obviously, the commission has no say in what the city does with.
No, I'm talking about the county.
Yeah, the county, I will say that the commission did not put that out. So that was a separate group, I think it was a commissioner. I would rather see the money go toward our corrections, or if you look at our jail, it's, we've already been threatened to be sued because of our inmate to correction staff ratio. And I like to dedicate it mostly to the sheriff's department. So I think the prosecutor's office, I really didn't think they needed another deputy prosecutor, and I voted no, based on, prior court proceedings and what they are currently. I mean, they have as many FTEs as they had 25 years ago. So I felt that the bulk of the money should stay within the sheriff's department.
Let's follow up on that. So what you're saying is, I don't know if your budget's been formulated yet in the county, but someone's gonna formulate a budget, so are you saying that those points, and you're correct, I was wrong, it was one council member and a bunch of us officials, many of which came out to a seminar here, town hall meeting we had here. So do you see that to be the starting point for the budget, or are you gonna be, I wanna say, arguing over what goes in the budget as a starting point? I'm not really sure how the county does their budgets, but how are those items that were on that list going to be handled in the budget one way or the other? I know the budget's open for discussion with the three of you.
Sure. Well, that was a question I brought up at our last meeting, actually, because what happened was we had a deputy prosecutor position come in, and to be approved, it has to get authorized by the commission. And my point was, we haven't started collecting the sales tax money. Is this going to be dedicated for the sales tax money or not? And I never really got a clear answer, and so I voted no on the prosecutor's position. If you look at our prior budget, our 2016 budget that we proposed and passed in 2015, I dedicated the sheriff's department the same amount of money. I had the best out of the three commission. My budget was $9.7 million, which was what they had in 2015. So I actually gave them the same amount of money as I did the year before. I don't know if I answered your question.
I think there's going to be a discussion of what those points are going to be.
Yeah.
And I understand what your position is on some of them anyway.
You bet.
We'll wait and see.
You bet. Thank you.
Jamie?
Well, I agree with majority of what Wes said, but the money for the tax does not come in until March, so we would have to wait and see until then.
Randy?
The county, I'm looking at an article from June 15th from the Daily World, and it mentioned that the county was $513,000 in the red at that point. The money from the 0.3% is going to be in the neighborhood for the county about 1.54 million. So that's a lot of people, a lot of potential. Could the thought of having the county run at a surplus ever exist? Because I see the difference there of almost $1 million. I know the needs or the wants are big, but the wants are one thing, needs are another.
Is it my turn first?
I think so.
Is it? Okay. Well, what's interesting is when I proposed my budget in 2016, if the commission had stayed on budget, I allocated $26 million for our general fund budget. If the commission had stayed to this budget, which I did, and you'll see my various no votes on new positions, we would be in the black. We would be in the black by almost $1 million. And I believe that this is our policy document. It's our most important document that we can abide by. And I stayed to our budget throughout the year. And if the commission had stayed to our budget, we would be in the black right now. So I think we'd have some leeway as far as the circle.
Thank you. Jamie?
I think that the extra money that we have a couple issues that the county needs to work out. Like Wes was saying earlier, that we do not have enough room, I believe it was, at the jail for the amount of people that are coming in. And I think that the prosecuting attorney does need help with more people in our office.
I have a couple of questions here. Wes, you probably know what they are. What's your goal for the veterans community within the next 4 years if you're elected? We have a lot of indigent veterans. We have a lot of veterans that are living off the grid. Something needs to be done in this county about it. We do have a fund for that, for that purpose. RCW 73.08 requires that every county in the state levy 1 1/8 cents per $1,000 of property taxes within that county, and that's the only thing that money can be used for. It cannot be put in the general fund. For the first 7 years, this county didn't even levy the funds until we brought it up to the attorney, and then they finally started levying it. The second question I have for you is,
Let's work on one
Okay.
question at a time, and Jamie,
Okay, the Veterans Fund. So can you give me like a little more numbers if there's?
well,
people-
actually, we're getting, I believe we got 40 some odd $1,000 this last year to work with 8,000 veterans in this community. We weren't drawing the minimum on the levy that we were supposed to be drawing. Why, I don't have any idea, but we had to get the attorney involved in that, to get the district attorney to tell the commissioners that they had to do that. Every other county, Mike and I just took a tour around the state and visited just about every county we possibly could, working with veterans. And this county right here is probably the worst county in the entire state for helping veterans. And, we do have, I sat in the Veterans Legislative Committee in Olympia, and we do pass laws and we do write recommendations for a reason. We're not wasting our time just to do this. They're there for a reason. One of the reasons is we have a lot of homeless veterans. You can't ask people to go to war 5, 6 times and come home and live on the streets and no one wants to help them.
I
That's
absolutely
ridiculous.
agree with you on that. My great-grandfather was in World War II, and he stepped on the back, stepped on a bomb, survived, but lost his legs from the knees down. Got a Purple Heart, and this was in North Dakota where he lived. And he was in a little tiny 1-bedroom apartment above a candy store, which was really awesome for the great-grandchildren, to go visit him and, get these giant lollipops from his friends. But I think America would not be what it is now without its veterans, and that is something that needs to be focused on, is taking care of them. Sorry, you're gonna get me emotional on that one, because that's a priority.
thank you, Jamie.
Well, I think as you notice, my grandfather served in 3 wars. He's a retired Navy. My dad was Navy. My older brother is just about retired Air Force. My sister was Army. So we definitely have a military family, and so I obviously support veterans in using the funds. But we have an advisory committee Mike Harris is on our advisory committee, James Lambert, Ken Estes, we have Maurice Fox that's on there as well. And what they do is they advise to us how they want to spend the money, and they're frugal with that money. And I know there's been some disagreement,
Well, that's my next question.
Yeah, there's been some disagreement as Otis with that board, and of course the commission usually rules with the advisory committee because that's what they're there for. And so there's been some disagreement, but overall I think our advisory committee does a great job. Bill Whipwire is the other member that I didn't mention, and I think they do a great job. The long-standing community members, one of our board members has been there since that statute that Otis had mentioned came about. So what we do is we listen to our advisory group and we act accordingly.
Thank you. Otis, your second question.
I have my second question. When will we see a Veterans Relief Committee, which you just spoke about, that isn't biased and handpicked by the commissioners and follow what the RCW says, which is this is a volunteer committee. It's open to any veteran in this county that wants to sit on that committee. When are we going to allow that to happen in this committee? Every town that we go into, there's 18 to 20 people on that committee, and they're all veterans. The committee we have now, none of them, I repeat, none of them, do any outreach in the community to find out what the veterans need. They don't write claims for the veterans. They don't do anything except for every 90 days they meet. I've sat in these meetings, I've seen so much garbage go on that it's unbelievable. Somebody will bring up a motion to be voted on, and it's shoved to the side and it's never even brought up again for anybody to vote on. This isn't how you run a committee. The committee should be voting on who they want and how they want to help their veterans. Not 5 people that aren't interested in helping veterans. And the 5 people we have right now have never been interested in helping the veterans except for Mike. He's the only one I know of that does help veterans.
Thank you.
Is it my response?
Responses?
Well, I got to say I disagree with your. Bill Whipwire's been a member of the community.
Bill Whitwire is one of the worst you got.
He's helped out. I mean, he helps out with FFA, 4-H. I mean, he's the one that puts on the Elma Easter egg hunt every year. It's gigantic. He's a veteran himself, and no, I have to defend our veteran board. They're a great group of guys, and they do a great job. And so
What does
humbly disagree.
what does putting on an Easter egg hunt have to do with working with veterans?
Otis, please let him respond.
Same thing as always.
No, I think that the 5, each member has different opinions about things, but when that's what they are, is they're an advisory committee, and they recommend certain items to the commission, and we take their recommendation. And it doesn't always make everybody happy, and that's part of, sitting as an elected official. There's definitely differing opinions, and I respect that, though. It's part of the process.
Jamie,
can you give me information on these board meetings? I would like to attend one and sit and see for myself exactly what happens, but are they in connection with like BFW halls? Do they go to the halls and see what people
No.
need and interview them and
No,
talk?
they don't do anything.
I think that needs to happen. And
I think that if you're gonna serve the veterans community, the veterans in the communities should serve the veterans, not be handpicked by 3 commissioners that are going to favor most of what the commissioners want. And I've heard this every time I've gone to a meeting. I've heard the same thing come out of these people. We feel grateful to be picked by the commissioners, and we will do what the commissioners want us to do. That isn't how a committee works.
how long is that committee, the sitting time on it? Is it a couple years, like 2
There
years?
should be a 1-year term limit on it, and it should be up to the organizations, the national organizations, to choose who they want on that committee, not the commissioners.
Thank you. Susan and then John.
I wonder if you would both respond to the comment that Otis just made, that the people who are appointed are going to do what you want them to do. My understanding is that there isn't really a job description per se, and I can't imagine that during an interview process you would tell them what it is that you want, so that they would then come back with that what you want. Explain a little bit more about an advisory committee, and what are you looking for when you appoint these people? And is it all three commissioners that agree on the appointments?
Well, I was curious as to the committee, do they have like a set of bylaws in which they're supposed to abide by? And
I have no idea, I've never seen any.
I'm just curious, I would like to know more about what their goals are to do throughout the community, that's for veterans.
Well, the other issue we have is the Public Meeting Act.
Can we hear from Wes?
Yeah.
First, and then we'll go to the next one.
Yeah, we appoint to various boards, there's various advisory committees that we appoint to, judicial committees, but this particular committee, the commission gives consent and we appoint to that committee. And they've obviously, you know, our most recent appointment is Mike Harris, which I think does a fantastic job, works for Grace Harbor. And Ken Estes, who is a longstanding member of the East Grace Harbor community, and you know, is right there out of that local VFW. So like I said, I will defend those 5 individuals. They're great people. They're involved in the community. They're involved with veterans. I mean, look what Ken Estes has done in Montesano with regard to veterans. You know, they're getting ready to present a new plaque. So I guess it's just a disagreement, you know, that I have with the gentleman.
Thank you. John?
My question is regarding what's called the road shift levy tax. I'd say about 3 years ago, the county decided to impose the road cost on everyone in the county, not just the county residents. And what they did was, as background, they levied the cities, started carrying the burden, and they lessened the county tax to equalize it so they had to pay no more. The net amount to the cities. That was taken off 2 years ago. And it's been off 2015 and 2016. It was on for like 3 years. What's your feeling about continuing that?
Well, I was one of the proponents of stopping that, robbing Peter to pay Paul, and there's also some other items that went along with the road levy shift, which is the cost allocations that we fixed at the county that I led the charge on. What happened was our general fund was stealing from our road department, not only through a road levy shift, but also through what are called cost allocations, and that's one of the things that I was a big supporter of stopping. I think it's important to have your financial business in order, and then you move from there. One of the other programs at the county that I think that was good that we stopped, my predecessors passed what was called the shared work program. So a county employee could take 2 furlough weeks off, and they'd get paid 60% of their wage by the unemployment office. Whereas our unemployment insurance went from $40,000 a year to $400,000 a year, and that was one of the items I stopped when I got in office.
Are you going to support the road levy tax go back on again this year or not?
No, absolutely not. I voted every time against it.
Jamie, your response?
I agree with Wes on the quote of rob Peter to pay Paul. I think that's a bad idea to borrow money from another area where you need to be focused on. And as far as a levy, I'm not sure what I don't think I'm gonna vote yes on that.
Next question? Gina?
You could tell by my handprint. I want to say that I do not want you to comment on the controversy with Frank Gordon. That's not the purpose of this question, but it does bring to light that, my opinion, when I elect an official, I hold them to a higher standard, and it occurred to me that maybe not everybody felt the same way. So if, as an elected official, as a hope to be elected official, do you feel that I'm correct in the fact that our elected officials should be held to a higher standard?
Ooh, I get to go first on this one, yay. I'm not going to comment on any of that situation, but yes, I think we should be held to a higher standard.
Absolutely, we are held to a higher standard. We should be held to a higher standard. And I think it's important that we are held to that standard without commenting specifically. So.
Next question? Bob?
As a follow-up to that, does the county commission have a code of ethics in place that's identifiable, readable by the public, or is it just assumed?
No, it's, the code of, I think it would be a conflict of interest for the other two commissioners, myself and the other commissioner, to get involved directly with any kind of disciplinary actions of a seatmate. So I would say that this is definitely a conversation between the public who elected Commissioner Gordon and him. I think that the media is really holding people accountable right now, and that's a good thing.
I agree. It's up to the people, it's their decision, I'm not going to say anything.
I'm gonna give you one more shot at it. The question is actually, does the county have an adopted code of ethics for the county commissioners?
No.
Did you have a follow-up, Bob?
That's the question.
I think you have your answer. Next one, Susan.
Well, let's follow up. Do you both think that there should be a code of ethics, or do you work without a code of ethics because you have your own?
My question or yours?
I don't know, I think I go first on this one. Me, you?
You are.
Okay. Wait, me? No. I'm getting confused,
Go ahead.
okay. I think that maybe the commissioner should have a code of ethics, but I think any adult knows what's right and what's wrong and what we are supposed to do. But maybe the commissioners do need a code of ethics.
We could certainly propose a code of ethics, but who's gonna hold them accountable? Who would hold an individual commissioner accountable? It would be the public. And so, there's a recall process, and that, I guess you could say that's an ethical code already in state law. And we are up for review, our jobs are up for review every 4 years. But it doesn't hurt to have maybe some policy in place, I think it's actually probably a pretty good idea, and, some kind of policy in place to outline some ethic code.
Next question?
We heard earlier, Wes, you said that the budget is currently in the red for $500,000, but I thought it was almost $1 million, but whatever it is. I want to ask the question, is that going to continue? That's taking out of your, the reserves are going down because of that. And what's going to happen in the next budget cycle to stop that? What has to be done?
It's my turn.
It is.
Okay, I passed the commission, I proposed my budget. Each commission proposes and brings forward their own budget. The commission unanimously approved my priority-based budget, and had the commission stuck to our budget, as I said, we'd be $1 million in the black. We'd be in good shape right now. But throughout the year, new positions come up, and I've probably voted against probably between 10 and 15 vacancies and new hires that came before the county because it was not in our policy document, our budget. And so I take a lot of pride in my votes, and those aren't always published, what individual positions we vote for. And so as I said, if the commission had stayed to my budget, the one that was passed, when was proposed and passed, we'd be in the black right now.
Jamie, your response?
The budget is something that I would have to go over and propose my own after, if I get in office, and we'd have to see from there where we're gonna go, but being in the red, that's not good.
Thank you. Bob, do you have a question?
You say that your budget was in the black.
Yep.
Where did we deviate on the commission to be in the red?
Where we deviated was new hires and vacant positions. So we have definitely a number of positions. For example, the prosecutor position, I voted no on the prosecutor position. It was not in our budget. And there was a reason. There's a new payroll person that was hired. It was not in our budget. There's a new clerk typist position upstairs in the on the third floor. I voted against that. There's a list of new positions that I voted against because those were not in our budget.
Thank you, Jamie.
There are certain areas that we do need to look at having new employees. We have, I believe it's 60 county employees that are gonna be retiring that we need to replace, and we need to do training where the people will come, the new hires will come in for about a month and study underneath these people to learn 20, 30 years of experience before you go into, say, the planning department. There's no one in there that can help you because we have no new hires. I think it's very important to start training.
Next question? Andy?
Well, you mentioned that each commissioner has their own budget, so you would have 3 budgets. Do you think that's an effective way to come up with budgets? 3 budgets, and then you, I guess you argue out and you come up with 1 budget. I'm wondering if that would work in the city. We have 7 representatives. Would it be best to have 7 budgets? Do you think?
I think that's a big headache when you get to 7.
So do you think it works for the county, or?
I think we can, the commissioners can all sit down and they could talk about the pros and cons of each individual area where they're taking money, giving money to, and work together to be able to come up with a budget that'll work for the county.
Okay.
Yes, I think that the 3 budgets, because what happens is we bring forward different ideas, and then when we get to the table, we discuss those ideas, and it may not turn out the way that we had anticipated. So I think it's an effective way. I know that the mayor form of government's a little different, because we're the executive as well as the legislative. And so we have to make that decision about the budget. But I think that the city form of government's a little different,
So you have no executive as such?
Yep, we are the executive.
I see. And do you end up with 1 budget, though, that?
Yes, they ended up,
Do you follow?
yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, hopefully they follow throughout the year.
Okay.
Next question, Randy?
You're the executive of the county, but we have autonomous other elected people that you control their budgets. It seems in the past we've had a lot of struggle, I'll call it, between those elected officials and their wishes and dreams and the county commissioners. How do you plan to deal with it in the future? Because as you mentioned, the county prosecutor wanted something, the sheriff wants something, Judge Edwards wants something, everyone wants something. How are you going to deal with that?
I think it's the best form of government, and that's exactly how government should transpire. They should fight for their budget, and the commissioners, because we control all budgets and contracts for the county, whether you're an elected or unelected official, and that's what they should do. They should all fight for their budget. It should be a public process, and they should tell us why, and the commissioners should set priorities for that budget and adopt it accordingly. And I think that's good when we have elected officials waving their hand, angry about what they want in their budget. That's good. That's part of the process, and I respect that.
Okay, my opinion about that. So this is the part that I know I'm not going to like if I get in office, because I've known a couple of those elected officials for a long time, and I'm gonna have to tell them no when it comes to certain things that they want in their budget. And we probably won't be friends anymore if certain cuts are gonna have to be made. Like if, I don't know, if the Rick Scott or something wants the margarita bar and foot massages every night at 5 o'clock, and obviously that's not gonna happen in the county budget. So maybe he might get mad at me, I don't know, but we have to make those decisions and what's best for the county over friendship.
Miles?
One of the things that, at least under my understanding, falls under your guys' purview would be public health and social services. And to that extent, one of the biggest areas, because I serve on the hospital board here in Grace Harbor, and one of the biggest things I see is that the need for mental health facilities and mental health education, as well as facilities to help these people. And I'm just wondering if you guys were either elected or re-elected, what you would do to help increase our abilities to deal with people with mental health problems.
Mental health as into what regards are you, like, are you talking about, sorry, I lost my train of thought here. What kind of facilities do you have now at the hospital?
We have none, we're not allowed to treat them,
Not allowed.
not allowed.
So where are the closest facilities for them?
Elma,
Elma is the closest for mental health, and is that in the ways of counseling, medication, anything like that?
both, but it's limited, very limited capacity.
And does this, and so the hospital board is not, are they in parts of any of, they're not a part of any housing or anything like that? That's interesting, I would like to learn more about that and what you guys need.
What?
You know, one of the things the board, the commissioners, we are the Board of Health, and actually one of the first goal in our 10-year homeless housing plan is to identify some of our homeless transients as, you know, what they need. You know, do they have children? Do they have mental issues? And so there's money available locally for those types of items, but you know, for something like that, you know, a facility, you're looking at spending a lot of money, and I think the best way to broach that is have good grant writing. And we actually, you know, one of the things that on the hiring committee, we've hired some people that are talented. For example, one of the people we hired in the Department of Health and Social Services was a grant, someone who's very good at grants, who actually scored #2 in the entire United States for a US DA grant, and that's pretty big when you look at all 50 states. So I think that putting talent in place to bring money from the state of Washington and from the federal government to maybe get a facility in here, and it's something that I would be open to looking at. So.
Thank you. Susan?
Difficult question for Wes to answer, but he'll have to go back in time. Your background that prepares you, you think, for being an expert, perhaps, on a budget? And you must have come with something. I know things have changed for you, Wes, so the question maybe is a little different for you than it will be for Jamie.
Sure. Public service. It's, I think, you know what's more valuable than having a financial background is the ability to say no. And, but my background is as a senior real estate appraiser, where I analyzed numbers for the last 7 years, you know, for the last 7 years before I was a commissioner. And I think that definitely prepared me for budget and for other items, because our main role as county commissioners is to oversee land use issues. And so my background in the assessor's office has really assisted me as a commissioner for those types of items. But you know, financial background, everybody has a home budget, and these positions weren't created for brain surgeons or financial people. These positions were created for farmers and janitors and people who want to serve. And so with that, I think anybody can balance a budget.
I would have to agree with Wes on that, and being a mother of 2 children and having to balance a home budget and buy groceries and school clothes, and you're given a small amount. I know the county, we can't use coupons on the county budget, but if you can manage a house and figure out how to get groceries and everything else you need, I think the county will be quite fun.
Richard?
So, public safety is an important issue, and this is a direct question. If you know, how many of the inmates incarcerated are there for drug offenses as opposed to non-drug offenses?
I go first on this one?
Yeah.
Okay, honestly, I do not know how many are there for which ones. Public safety is a huge issue for me. That was one of the main reasons why I decided to run, was also the fact that me and my 3-year-old son were shopping, and in the toy section, ankle height, bottom shelf, he pulled out a baby. A bag. A little baby. I didn't know what it was. And he tried to open it, and I grabbed it out of his hands, and I took it to the front counter. I called the police, and I'm like, I don't know what this stuff is. I've never getting that stuff when I was, so I took him up to the hospital and he got a drug test and nothing was in his system, but when I talked to a police officer on the phone and he told me, after I sent him pictures of what the item was, he said it was in fact crystal meth. And it's something, there's not enough money in the county budget to fund something like that. Sorry, I get emotional about this one too, but it would have had to be something very tragic happening for the county to take effect in extra patrols, whether, so that's, the public safety is a huge issue to me, just because personally that hit home. It could have been a tragic event, and thank goodness it wasn't.
I think that number's 80%.
8%?
80.
80%.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that it's up there as far as the reason why we have people in our jail right now. But an interesting point is one of our grant writers were able to get a $300,000 grant in order to accommodate our third courtroom, which will be hopefully, I know Commissioner Raines is working on that, open up a drug court, and that would help assist with this epidemic we have. And yeah, I support law enforcement. If you look at our 3 budgets, my budget gave $9.7 million compared to the commission as a whole. Each of the budgets, mine was the best for law enforcement, and you know, I supported putting it on the ballot. Let people decide if they want more deputies on the road, more corrections officers. So yeah, I definitely support law enforcement.
Gina?
The 0.3% passed, and I was told that Commissioner Cormier had stated at a public meeting that this money would be put into a separate fund so that it could be seen by anybody in the public where those funds were going. And Jamie, I'm sorry that this is leaving you out, but I do appreciate that. If you are elected, will you let that remain? If you remain in office, what do you intend to do to make sure that happens?
Well, one of the things was in state law we can't supplant, so you can't you can't supplant the money we're getting from the sales tax with our general fund revenue. So my position was, I proposed that we set aside a separate account to allocate that money toward that endeavor. So it was a good, for transparency it's important, because we don't want to stuff that entire, more than $1 million into our general fund and go, we're spending it on law enforcement. I wanted to make sure that that's dedicated for what the people voted for, and so that was a reason why I proposed that going into a separate account.
I think that's a good idea. I agree with them.
Randy?
Speaking of the 0.3%, only 1/3 of it is required by law to be used for the stated purpose under the RCWs. If the county comes into hard times, because there's talk of potential downturn in the future, will that money stay where it's the whole amount, 1.54 projected million, or will some of it be subsumed into the general fund?
That's my question.
Yeah, you're first.
Yes. It'll stay toward law enforcement, but I'm only one of 3 votes. In my opinion, if you look at my record, even when the general fund was suffering, I wanted to, at the county, I wanted to have good accounting practice. And so as I spoke earlier about the cost allocation, it's interesting because Mason County is paying back more than $1 million because the state auditor's office came in and dinged them for trying to use their road money for general fund by pushing off. And I can give you an example of what I mean by cost allocation. So we have ER&R, it's called rental revolving fund, where our car pools are. And what happened was there was a different rate being charged for the general fund for the same car as the road fund. So, they pay 90 cents on the dollar in the road fund, they pay 10 cents on the dollar in the general fund for, say, the assessor's office or the building department. And when I came in, we stopped that immediately because it's just not good accounting practice. You have to know what your revenues and your expenditures are, and you cannot pad funds like that. And so, that was my goal coming in there, to just see what and of course, after we started pulling off these Band-Aids, the general fund did take a hit, but over the last couple of years, after pulling those Band-Aids off, we went from a $2.5 million deficit, and now we're actually, I think you're right, we're down to more like $1 million.
I think the money should stay in that account, and if that's what it was going to go for, and that's what the people are told it's gonna go for, it should stay there.
Bob?
I watch the county agendas now for 10, 15 years, something like that. Read every one every week, the addendums and background information. And I notice one really glaring issue, and I know you can't solve it at the county issue, but I wonder if you've thought about it. There's trying to look for the right word, a big mishmash of state, local, federal programs that get funded from an equally large set of forces that require you to do budget amendments almost weekly. It seems like there's a heck of a lot of money, both being generated locally and pass-through money from other places, that is going a little bit here, and a little bit here, and a little bit here, and a little bit there. And is there a way in the future maybe to consolidate the effect of some of those programs? Because many of them overlap terribly. Duplicity is common in those. That's waste. Have you given any thought to trying to affect some of those outcomes in that way?
I'm first on this one.
I think you're up, yes.
Okay. There's certain things in the budget that we need to focus on first, that where the money needs to go. And I think after, I make my own budget and have it planned, then I can have a better answer for you. But
I think I had never thought of that. It's duplicating services. That's interesting. I'd never really considered some of those agenda items, how repetitive it can be, and so it's something I'll definitely look into. I'm always looking at bettering our processes at the county, and I think that's a good idea, and it's something I'm going to look into. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I have one follow-up to that,
Sure.
briefly. Is there a person that is directly responsible for behavioral sciences and those kinds of issues? Or is it the Board of Health, which is the county commission?
It's the Board of Health, and we have a director at the board. We have someone underneath us that looks into our day-to-day, runs operations, and so I would say that they would be more in line to do something like that.
Next question?
I have one. Let's go back to the drugs and the police department. I've been working with homeless people for over 15 years, both drug addicts, alcoholics. And there's a misconception out there that the more law enforcement we have, the better the problem's gonna get. Well, that's false. That is totally false. You need education, you need treatment programs, you need to get the people involved. You need to get the communities involved. The police departments are never gonna end the crime, and they're never gonna end the drug use. And until the health department understands that, you're always gonna have a drug issue there. And it seems to be getting larger by the day. It's not getting smaller, it's getting larger by the day. We have veterans courts that I've worked with, I've worked with drug courts, I've worked with a lot of different organizations. And the one thing that everybody has always said, without education and educating the people on what they're doing wrong, it's never gonna work out. And I'm all for police departments. I have people in my family that are police officers. But I'm also for, making sure that the person that has the issue is treated for that issue, and not just thrown behind bars and then let back out to do the same thing again. Doesn't work.
Otis, I'm unclear as to what your question is.
Well, my question is, has the health department ever taken a look at that? Have they considered opening up a treatment center or anything of that nature instead of putting everything into law enforcement?
I thought that they've looked into it before, about opening a treatment center, a methadone clinic? I believe
No,
it was.
not just a methadone clinic.
Are you
just
talking
a-
about like counseling?
Yes, for
and-
counseling and mental health issues, yes.
I think that would be great if that happened.
I mean, I realize money got to come from someplace.
Well, it's interesting, we did create were you
Yeah. that was-
okay. We created a 10-year homeless housing plan, and I would also like to give kudos to the sheriff. We have, I want to say the numbers are 11 neighborhood watch groups locally, and they have been tremendously successful because they have direct contact with Chief Criminal Deputy Shoemate in stopping a lot of the crime locally. And so much so that the city of Holcomb, even the city police chief, has decided to start a neighborhood watch program as well. And that's a good way to combat local crime, property crime, and items like that. But I think that our health department, they've gone through a pretty big transition, going from a local health department to now a regional. And so after getting their 10-year homeless housing plan, I think they're really starting to address the issue. Because we certainly have money to do that, so.
Thank you.
Randy?
I was sort of shocked by Miles because I thought the hospital had a drug treatment facility there where people, and I know the nation has a lot of people that are admitted there for that because it shows on their budget, when they were originally doing the hospital district, unless they got rid of it. It was part of the hospital. And I thought the county joined a multi-county mental health organization. What type of funding are we giving to that, and who are we sending, and what services are we getting back here if we join that?
My turn to respond, or you're, sorry, I keep forgetting. I was against regionalizing, because when you regionalize, you lose services. I mean, I equate it to the game whack-a-mole that my kids play. The further the mole is, the harder it is to whack them on the head, right? And I think that's with your elected officials. I mean, you can always come into my office, knock on my door, and I'll be there. But can you do that with your legislators in Olympia? Yeah, maybe sometimes. Your federal government, no. So the more you regionalize, the further away the services get, and the harder it is to get answers. And so I was against regionalizing. I understand it could bring more revenue and more, more ability to use tax funds that way. But for me, I would have rather to see it a local, public health. So I hope that answers your question.
I was asking also what we got back. Did we get anything back from this thing?
I guess what you could say, as far as regionalization, you get opportunity for some additional funding, but again, it's regionalized, so how the money ends up in Grays Harbor is a fight between 5 different counties. So.
Jamie, your response?
If we could get more funding and more money for mental health facilities or drug rehab, I think it's something we need to look into.
Thank you. Any other questions? Edith and Andy?
So it has been in the past that a previous county commission group voted for interfund loan transfers. City of Ocean Shores has done that. And the penalty and the idea of being a strict repayment hasn't always been considered the norm. In fact, it was decided, the talk here was to let it be a wash because you're just paying back yourself. But I know that the county had been paying back an interfund loan that they took out to pay wages several years ago. And I just heard Frank Chestnut say that they were looking at going ahead and taking interfund loans. Is this something that the county would be considering? with you as commissioners?
I do not think it's a good idea to take out a loan against yourself. Is that basically what you guys were doing? Yeah. I don't know, I'd have to look into all the paying back and everything on it before I would make my decision on that.
What's your response?
In the past, my predecessors did take out some interfund loans to make payroll, and I think that's dangerous ground. But once in a while, if there's an emergency, we had an emergency come up where we had the pavilion roof, and we got some grant money to fix our pavilion roof. And we established that we needed some contingency money, and everything was set. Well, the USDA came back and said, no, you need some more contingency money. And so we did a temporary post-closure interfund loan that we're required by state law to pay back. And it's being paid back out of the appropriate fund. We get money from overnight stays called the 2%. It's a stadium fund, and it's exactly designed for stadiums. But in this case, a pavilion is absolutely a reason to use this money that's already dedicated. And so that money is being paid back by the stadium fund, and it was an emergency. And so I support it on occasion. If there's an emergency, we need some contingency money. We could have used general fund, but we had this fund available, so we used it.
Thank you. Andy?
Well, I'm just curious how you as elected officials deal with apathetic citizenry. Like, for example, I've been to a city council meeting, there's been less people than there is in this room. So how do you deal with problems of people being educated and knowing what the problems are? And mostly they get excited when they're upset. That's only when they come out of the woodwork. So how do you deal with apathy?
That's a good question.
So who's ever...
Sure. Here's a recent example. The outlaw drag races. I had a lot of backlash for the outlaw drag races, and come to find out, I think many of the citizens realized that it wasn't even our decision to make. I went to one of our board of adjustment, and I kind of equated it to, the president appoints to the U.S. Supreme Court, but he's not responsible for the decisions from the Supreme Court. And that's kind of what I quit. And just to help people understand, you use analogies and you just, you explain to people the process and that you're working with them. And there's been a couple processes at the county that I've been proud to change. And what you do is you just help out people as much as possible. And I don't want to take too much time, but I could give a story of an example that I'm very proud of. The Montesano Senior Center, they were being displaced from their current location because of some disagreement with rent. And it wasn't county related, it was private business. And so they were displaced, and the city of Montesano invited them to reside out of there. Well, we oversee the environmental health department. And the environmental health department said you have 3 months. That's a temporary vending license. You have 3 months and then you're out. And as the time approached, I was looking for ways to accommodate them, and I started looking through statute, and I found that there's a variance for roads, there's a variance for planning. Surely there might be a variance for food vending, and I found that there was. And when I presented to the legal department, they actually said no, this doesn't apply. Most commissioners were probably stopped right there, except I went to the Washington State Department of Health and I said, does this apply? And the Washington Department of Health said, yeah, actually it does apply. And so we were able to accommodate them for an additional 9 months at that location, so they were able to serve their seniors. So.
I think is when people get mad and want to get involved, it's at the beginning you got to calm them down. But when people are upset that things aren't going right, that's how we make changes in the county. And it's almost a good thing. And it's all about how you talk to them and make sure you're calm, and then figure out a plan to work together to accommodate to what they have going on.
Thank you. Randy?
Moving away from budgets and whatnot, sort of. We live out in Ocean Shores. We have an ocean right out here. And then there's also the rest of the North Beach. Ocean Shores got rid of its surf rescue because, one, the age of our personnel, have gotten past a certain point, and I suspect there's a liability. And there's also a trash issue on our beaches. We share those beaches with the county. In fact, it's at a certain point, it's county property, not Ocean Shores property and responsibility. If you go to Pacific County, they have the Pacific County, South Pacific County Technical Rescue Group that does surf rescue. Notice the word county, not Long Beach surf rescue. When and how will the county take over the responsibility of managing the safety at the beaches like other counties all across this county do? It's usually not city, it's county doing these things. You go to Los Angeles County, they're the lifeguards. They manage it.
Actually, we were just asked about this when we were over doing our other interview. Surf and rescue, I think we need it. It's very important. Just like my life revolves around my kids, so I'm gonna bring them up again. Whenever we go on the beach, they have to wear life jackets, no matter what, even if it's ankle deep. I don't care. But I think that through what Wes said earlier when we were over there, but through the tourism departments, we could use education about riptides and what to be aware of. And social media is great for doing that. But I think the county should start some sort of program.
Yeah, I would add that you definitely talk to Sheriff Rick Scott, because he's the one that handles emergency management, and I think it's something that maybe Chuck Wallace could look at, and as well as the sheriff, and see if there's any grants that we couldn't look at getting for some